One warrior's sacrifice sparked a love that shook the galaxy. Asterisk. The alarm bells rang through Kepler Station like the cries of dying birds. Commander Elena Vasquez ran down the metal corridors, her boots making sharp sounds on the floor. Red emergency. Lights flashed everywhere, making her face look like it was painted with blood. Report. She shouted into her communication device as she reached the command center. Lieutenant Chen looked up from his screen, fear clear in his eyes. Ma'am. They broke through the outer defense ring. 15 Keftar crystal ships are heading straight for us. Our fighters can't stop them. Elena felt her heart sink. She had seen what the Keftar Empire did to other worlds. They took everything, people, resources, hope. Every planet they touched became a gray wasteland where nothing grew and no one smiled anymore. Through the big window of the command center, Elena could see the enemy ships. They looked like giant pieces of dark crystal floating in space. Beautiful and terrible at the same time. Energy weapons shot out from them like lightning, destroying everything they hit. How many civilians are still on the station? Elena asked. 3,000, ma'am. The evacuation ships are almost ready, but they need more time. That was what they needed most and had least of. Elena watched as another human fighter exploded in a ball of fire. Good people dying while trying to protect others. This was what humans did. They fought for those who couldn't fight for themselves. Ma'am, Chen said quietly, the Keftar are trying to communicate with us. Elena nodded. Put them through. The main screen filled with the image of a tall creature that looked almost human, but wasn't. Its skin was pale blue, and its eyes were like pieces of silver metal. When it spoke, its voice was cold and empty of feeling. Human commander, the Keftar said. I am Fleet Commander Vergith of the Keftar Empire. Your resistance is pointless. Surrender now. And some of you may live as servants. Elena stepped forward. This is Commander Elena Vasquez of the Human Defense Force. We don't surrender to bullies. Something moved behind Vergith on the screen. Elena saw another Keftar, smaller and younger. This one's eyes were different. They held something that looked almost like sadness. Your species is weak, Vergith continued. You fight for others instead of yourselves. This makes you soft. This makes you lose. Maybe, Elena said. But it also makes us human. Vergith made a sound that might have been laughter. You will understand weakness when your station burns. The screen went black. Elena turned to her crew. They all looked scared, but none of them ran away. That was the thing about humans. They stayed together when things got bad. Chen, what's the status on those evacuation ships? Still need 10 more minutes, ma'am. 10 minutes? Elena looked at the tactical display. The Keftar would be here in 5, ma'am. Called out Engineer Rodriguez from across the room. I might have an idea. Those quantum charges we've been testing, if we could get them close enough to their main ship. Elena understood immediately. The quantum charges were experimental weapons that could create small tears in space itself. But someone would have to fly them right into the enemy ship. It would be a one-way trip. How close? Elena asked. Right into their engine core. The pilot would have to ram the ship directly. The room became quiet except for the sound of alarms and distant explosions. Everyone knew what this meant. I'll do it, Elena said simply. Ma'am, no. Chen stood up. Send me. You're needed here. Elena smiled sadly. Chen, you have a family waiting for you on Earth. I don't. This is my choice. She looked around at her crew one more time. These people trusted her to keep them safe. Now she had to trust them to get everyone else to safety. Give me the fastest fighter you can find and load it with every quantum charge we have. Elena ordered. 20 minutes later, Elena sat in the cockpit of a small fighter ship. The Keftar crystal ships were so close now that she could see the energy flowing through them, like blue fire. Behind her, the last evacuation ship was leaving the station. She opened a channel to all human ships. This is Elena Vasquez. Get our people out of here. Whatever happens next, remember that we never gave up. We never stopped fighting for what's right. Elena pushed the engines to full power. Her small ship shot forward like a bullet toward the biggest Keftar vessel. Energy beams tried to hit her, but she moved too fast. dancing between them like a leaf in the wind. On the enemy flagship, the young Keftar Elena had seen earlier watched the human ship approaching. Her name was Zareth, and she was Vergith's daughter. She had studied human tactics and found them confusing. Humans often made choices that helped others but hurt themselves. The Keftar called this weakness, but Zareth wondered if there was something else to it. "Father, the human ship is on a collision course," Zareth reported. Vergith looked annoyed. "Destroy it. Our weapons can't lock onto something so small moving so fast." Elena's fighter got closer and closer. She could see individual Keftar. Through the crystal walls of their ship, they looked surprised. Maybe they had never seen someone choose to die for others before. "Come on," Elena whispered to herself, just a little closer. The quantum charges began to glow brighter. Elena thought about her sister back on Earth, about the children in those evacuation ships, about all the people she would never meet but was dying to protect Dot at the last second. She saw the young Keftar, female, looking right at her. Their eyes met across the distance of space and through the crystal wall. For just a moment, Elena saw something in those silver eyes that looked almost human. Then Elena's fighter hit the Keftar ship's core. The explosion was like nothing anyone had ever seen. Blue and white light filled space as reality itself seemed to tear apart. The quantum charges didn't just destroy the enemy ship, they created a crack in space. In time itself, Elena felt herself being pulled apart and put back together again. The universe became a kaleidoscope of colors and sounds and feelings that weren't hers. For a moment that lasted forever, she felt connected to something vast and alien and beautiful. Then everything went white when the light faded. The Keftar flagship was gone. The evacuation ships were safe. Elena's fighter was nowhere to be found. But in the space where the explosion happened, something strange remained. A small tear in reality itself, invisible but real, connecting to minds across impossible distance. Zareth stood in the ruins of her father's backup ship, staring at where the human had been. Something had changed inside her in that moment when their eyes met, something that would change everything. 3 months had passed since the battle at Kepler Station. The human evacuation fleet had made it safely to the inner colonies, carrying stories of Commander Elena Vasquez's brave sacrifice. Her name was spoken with respect in every human settlement across the galaxy. But Elena was not really gone. She existed now in a place that had no name. Floating in the strange space between reality and dreams, her body was destroyed. But her mind lived on in the quantum tier she had created. Sometimes she felt like herself. Other times she felt scattered across the stars like dust. The strangest part was the dreams that weren't hers. Elena found herself seeing through alien eyes. Walking through crystal corridors that hummed with energy, she saw tall, blue-skinned beings moving with perfect order, never speaking unless necessary, never showing emotion. She felt their thoughts, cold, logical, focused only on conquest and control. These were Keftar memories, but they belonged to one specific person, the young female who had looked at her in that final moment. Meanwhile, across the galaxy on the Keftar flagship Dominion, Zareth was having her own strange experiences. She woke up every night from dreams of a blue-green world where billions of different people lived together. In these dreams, she saw creatures helping each other even when they gained nothing from it. She watched beings called humans who chose to suffer so others could be happy. These dreams made no sense to her. In Keftar society, the strong ruled, and the weak served. That was the natural order. But in her dreams, she saw strength used to protect weakness, not destroy it. "Daughter." Her father Vergith's voice cut through her thoughts. "You seem distracted during our meetings." Zareth stood straighter in the command center of their new flagship. After losing his ship at Kepler Station, Vergith had been given an even larger vessel. The High Command wanted him to make up for his failure by conquering 3 more systems. "I'm focused on our mission, Father," Zareth replied. Vergith's silver eyes studied her carefully. "Good. We approached the Centauri system today. Intelligence reports show it has minimal defenses. We will take it easily." Zareth nodded, but something inside her felt wrong. in her dreams. She had seen human families living on the planets of Centauri, children playing in gardens, old people telling stories to young ones. The humans there were not soldiers, they were just people trying to live their lives. What are your orders for the civilian population? Zareth asked. Standard protocol. The useful ones become servants, the rest are eliminated. Before the dream started, Zareth would have accepted this without question. Now, the thought made her feel sick. That night, as the Kethtar fleet moved toward Centauri, Zareth lay in her sleeping chamber. The walls were made of the same crystal as their ships, and they glowed softly with blue light. She closed her eyes and waited for the dreams to come. But this time was different. Hello, Zareth. The voice was gentle and warm, unlike any Kethtar voice she had ever heard. Zareth opened her eyes and gasped out a human woman stood in her room, but she wasn't really there. Her form was made of soft light that flickered like a candle flame. She had dark hair and kind eyes, and she looked tired but not defeated. You're the one from Kepler Station, Zareth whispered. The one who destroyed my father's ship. Elena nodded slowly. My name is Elena Vasquez, and you're Zareth, daughter of Vergith. How do you know my name? How are you here? You died. I should have died, Elena said, sitting down on the edge of Zareth's bed like an old friend. But something happened when the quantum charges exploded. I think we got connected. Somehow. Zareth sat up quickly. Connected? What do you mean? I've been seeing your memories, your thoughts, your life. Elena's expression grew sad. I've seen what your people do to others, but I've also seen your doubts. I don't have doubts, Zareth said quickly, but even as she spoke, she knew it wasn't true. Elena smiled softly. It's okay to question things. That's what makes us grow. My people don't grow. We conquer. We bring order to chaos. Is that what you call it? Elena asked. I call it fear. Zareth stood up angrily. Fear? The Kethtar fear nothing. No. Elena said gently, you fear everything. You fear differences. You fear change. You fear anything you can't control. So you try to control everything. The words hit Zareth like a physical blow. No one had ever spoken to her like this before. In Kethtar society, questioning the Empire was forbidden. Why should I listen to you? Zareth demanded. You're just a human. A weak, emotional creature. Elena's form flickered, and for a moment Zareth thought she might disappear. But then she solidified again. Maybe I am weak, Elena said, but I chose to die for people I didn't even know. What have you chosen to do with your strength? Zareth had no answer. Over the following days, Elena appeared to Zareth several more times. They talked about many things: human culture, Kethtar, history, the nature of strength and weakness. Elena showed Zareth memories of Earth, with its vast diversity of life and people. She shared stories of humans who had given up everything to help others. In return, Zareth began to open up about her own life. She told Elena about growing up in the rigid structure of Kethtar society, where every moment was planned and every emotion was controlled. She spoke of her secret doubts about the Empire's methods, doubts she had never dared voice before. What was your world like before the Empire? Elena asked during one of their conversations. Zareth was quiet for a long time. Different, she finally said. There are old stories from before the Great Ordering. My grandmother used to tell them to me in secret. She said our people once created beautiful things, art, music, poetry. But the High Command decided such things were distractions from our true purpose. What purpose? To bring order to the galaxy, to make everything clean and perfect and controlled. Elena shook her head. That's not order. That's death. Real life is messy and complicated and beautiful because it's different. As the days passed, Zareth found herself changing. When her father ordered the destruction of a refugee ship, she suggested taking prisoners instead. When the High Command demanded they strip mine a planet's resources, she recommended leaving the ecosystem intact. Vergith began to notice his daughter's strange behavior. You have been making unusual suggestions lately, he said one evening, after a strategy meeting. I'm trying to be more efficient, Zareth replied carefully. Efficiency is good, but mercy is weakness. Do not forget that. That night, Elena appeared again, but she looked more faded than before. I don't think I can keep this up much longer, she said. The connection is becoming unstable. Zareth felt a strange pain in her chest. What do you mean? I mean I might disappear for good. The quantum field that's keeping me here is breaking down. No, Zareth said, surprising herself with how much the thought scared her. You can't leave. You're the only one who understands. Elena smiled sadly. Then you have to make a choice. You can keep following your father's path, or you can choose something different. What kind of choice? The kind that changes everything. Elena's form began to flicker more rapidly. Zareth, tomorrow your fleet reaches the Centauri system. 3 billion humans live there. Your father plans to enslave or kill them all. Zareth felt her heart racing. What am I supposed to do? I'm just one person. So was I. Elena said as her image began to fade. But sometimes one person can change the fate of the galaxy. With that, Elena vanished, leaving Zareth alone with the biggest decision of her life, outside her window. The stars of the Centauri system grew brighter as the Kethtar fleet approached. In a few hours, the attack would begin. Zareth closed her eyes and tried to imagine what Elena would do. The Kethtar fleet hung in space like deadly stars around the Centauri system. On the bridge of the flagship Dominion, Vergith studied the tactical displays with cold satisfaction. 3 planets full of humans lay before them, defenseless and unaware of their coming doom. Begin the assault, he commanded. Wait, Zareth said, stepping forward. Her heart was beating so fast she was sure everyone could hear it. Father, I request permission to speak. Vergith's silver eyes turned to his daughter. What is it? The humans in this system are not soldiers. They are civilians, farmers, teachers, children. Perhaps we could offer them a chance to surrender. Peacefully, the bridge fell silent. Every Kethtar officer stared at Zareth as if she had grown a second head. In their society, showing mercy to enemies was not just unusual, it was unthinkable. Daughter, Vergith said slowly, explain yourself. Zareth took a deep breath. Living servants are more valuable than dead ones. If we destroy everything, we gain nothing. But if we offer terms, we might gain willing workers instead of fearful slaves. It was a careful argument, one that appealed to Kethtar logic rather than emotion. Vergith considered it for a long moment. Very well. Send a surrender demand to the human colonies. Give them 1 hour to respond. If they refuse, we destroy them all. Zareth felt a mix of relief and terror. She had bought time, but she didn't know what to do with it. That night, as the Kethtar fleet waited for the human response, Zareth sat alone in her quarters. The walls hummed with energy from the ship's crystal power core, but the sound that usually comforted her now made her feel trapped. Elena, she whispered into the darkness. I need you. The air shimmered, and Elena's glowing form appeared. She looked more solid than before, as if their connection was growing stronger. I felt what you did today, Elena said, sitting beside Zareth. That took courage. I may have just delayed the inevitable, Zareth replied. My father will not wait forever. Then we need to think of something else. Over the next several hours, Elena and Zareth talked like they never had before. Elena shared memories of growing up on Earth, the feeling of rain on her face, the taste of her grandmother's cooking, the sound of her sister's laughter. She showed Zareth what it meant to choose her own path, to love freely, to live without fear. In return, Zareth opened her heart about her deepest secrets. She told Elena about the old Kethtar songs her grandmother had taught her, melodies that spoke of beauty and wonder, instead of conquest and order. She shared her dreams of seeing other worlds not as territories to conquer, but as places to explore and understand. I've been thinking, Elena said as dawn approached on the ship's chronometer. What if there was another way? What if instead of conquest, your people could learn to cooperate with others? That's impossible, Zareth said, but her voice lacked conviction. The Kethtar have always been conquerors. Not always, Elena reminded her. You said yourself that your people once created beautiful things. What if they could again? Zareth closed her eyes and imagined it, Keftar and humans working together, sharing knowledge and culture. The idea seemed impossible, but it also filled her with a strange warmth. "Elena," she said softly, "I think I understand now what you meant about choosing." "What do you mean?" "I choose to believe that things can be different. I choose to believe that strength can be used to protect instead of destroy. I choose to believe in the possibility of something better." Elena smiled, and for a moment her form blazed brighter. "That's the most human thing I've ever heard you say. Is it wrong for me to want to be more like humans?" "No," Elena said gently. "It's not wrong at all." As they sat together in the soft glow of the crystal walls, something shifted between them. What had started as curiosity and understanding had grown into something deeper. They were no longer just two minds connected by quantum accident. They were two souls who had found each other across the impossible distance of space and species. "Zareth," Elena said quietly, "I need to tell you something." "What?" "I think I'm falling in love with you." The words hung in the air between them like stars. Zareth felt her breath catch in her throat. Love was not something the Keftar talked about. It was considered another weakness, another distraction from their purpose. But as she looked at Elena's gentle face, Zareth realized that this feeling growing in her chest wasn't weakness at all. It was the strongest thing she had ever experienced. "I don't know if I understand love the way humans do," Zareth said. "But I know that when I'm with you, I feel like I can be myself for the first time in my life. When I think about you disappearing, it hurts more than any physical pain." Elena reached out as if to touch Zareth's face, but her hand passed through like light. "I wish I could really be here with you." "You are here," Zareth said, "in every way that matters." Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent communication from the bridge. The human colonies had responded to the surrender demand. "They're asking for more time," the communications officer reported when Zareth arrived. "They say they need to evacuate their children and elderly first." Vergith's expression darkened. "Unacceptable. They are trying to delay us while they call for help." "Perhaps we should give them the time they ask for," Zareth suggested. "It would show strength through mercy." "Mercy is weakness," Vergith slammed his fist on the command console. "I am beginning to suspect that you have been compromised somehow, daughter. Your behavior has become strange." Zareth felt ice in her veins. "What do you mean?" "I mean that you have been questioning orders, showing sympathy for enemies. And now you speak of mercy as if it were a virtue. These are not Keftar values." Before Zareth could respond, another officer approached. "Supreme Commander, we have detected unusual quantum signatures emanating from your daughter's quarters. They appear to be communications of some kind." Vergith's eyes narrowed. "Communications? With whom then known, sir? But the frequency matches readings from the quantum explosion at Kepler Station." Zareth felt her world crumbling around her. They had discovered her connection to Elena. "Daughter," Vergith said, his voice cold as the void of space, "you will report to the purification chamber immediately. Father, please now." As Keftar guards moved to escort her away, Zareth caught sight of Elena's faint form appearing near the command station. Only she could see the human woman, and Elena's expression was full of sorrow and fear. The purification chamber was a place Zareth had never wanted to see. It was where the Keftar corrected those who had been contaminated by foreign ideas. The process would destroy the part of her mind that connected to Elena, leaving her as emotionless and obedient as every other Keftar. As the guards prepared the machinery, Zareth closed her eyes and reached out through their quantum link. "Elena," she whispered in her mind, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry we couldn't have more time." Elena's voice came back strong and clear. "Don't give up. We'll find a way through this." "How?" "In a few minutes, I won't even remember you exist. Then we need to do something before that happens." "What?" Elena's form appeared in the chamber, visible only to Zareth. Her expression was determined. "We need to show them that love is stronger than fear. That connection is stronger than control." "How?" "Trust me," Elena said. "And whatever happens, remember that you chose to love instead of hate. That choice will always be yours, no matter what they do to your mind." The purification machine hummed to life, its crystals glowing with harsh light. Zareth felt the beginning of the process as strange energies began to probe her thoughts. But at that moment, something unexpected happened. Elena's quantum form suddenly blazed with brilliant light, and the connection between them grew stronger than it had ever been. "I'm not letting them take you," Elena said, her voice echoing with power. "Hold on, Zareth. Hold on to who you choose to be." The purification machine sparked and sputtered as Elena's quantum energy interfered with its systems. Alarms began to sound throughout the ship. Zareth felt Elena's strength flowing through her, giving her the courage to stand up and face whatever came next. Their love had become something more than either of them had imagined. It had become a force that could challenge the very foundations of the Kethtar Empire. The purification chamber filled with blinding light as Elena's quantum form blazed like a star. The Kethtar machinery sparked and smoked, unable to handle the strange energy flowing through their connection. Alarms screamed throughout the ship as power systems began to fail. Zareth felt Elena's strength flowing into her, and something incredible happened. For the first time in her life, she felt truly free. The chamber door burst open as Vergith and his guards rushed in. They stopped in shock at what they saw. Their perfectly ordered technology was failing, and Zareth stood in the center of it all, her eyes glowing with the same quantum light as Elena's form. "What is this?" Vergith demanded, his voice shaking with rage and fear. "This," Zareth said, standing tall and proud, "is choice." Elena's form became visible to everyone in the room, her light reflecting off the crystal walls. The Kethtar guards stepped back in terror. They had never seen anything like this before. "Father," Zareth continued, "I choose to reject everything you taught me. I choose love over hate. I choose cooperation over conquest. I choose to believe that there's a better way." "You choose treason," Vergith snarled, raising his weapon. "Guards, destroy that quantum anomaly and arrest my daughter." But the guards hesitated. Something about Elena's presence, the pure light of her being, made them pause. In that light, they saw possibilities they had never imagined. "Wait," one of the younger guards said. "Supreme Commander, perhaps we should listen to what they have to say." Vergith whirled around. "You dare question my orders?" The guard, whose name was Kelvar, looked nervous but determined. "Sir, I've been thinking about what Lieutenant Zareth said about the humans. Maybe there's wisdom in finding another way. Another way." Vergith's voice rose to a shout. "There's only the Kethtar way. Order through strength. Control through fear." Elena stepped forward, her quantum form rippling with energy. When she spoke, her voice carried to every corner of the ship through the communication systems. "People of the Kethtar fleet," she said, "my name is Elena Vasquez. I was your enemy, but I don't want to be anymore. I've learned about your people through Zareth, and I know you weren't always conquerors. You once created beautiful things. You once knew joy and wonder." Throughout the ship, Kethtar crew members stopped what they were doing to listen. Many had never heard a human voice before, and they were surprised by its gentleness. "Your leaders tell you that strength comes from making others fear you," Elena continued. "But I've seen real strength. Real strength is protecting those who cannot protect themselves. Real strength is choosing to help instead of hurt, even when it costs you everything." On the bridge, the communications officer looked confused. "Sir, the message is being broadcast on all frequencies. Other ships in the fleet are receiving it too." Vergith's face turned darker. "Cut the transmission." "I can't, sir. The quantum interference is overriding our systems." Elena's message continued. "Zareth showed me that some of you have doubts. Some of you wonder if there might be a better way to live. I'm here to tell you that there is. You don't have to choose between strength and kindness. You can have both." In his quarters, young Officer Kehan set down his duty report and listened with growing amazement. He had always felt uncomfortable with the Empire's brutal methods, but he had never dared voice his concerns. In the engine room, Chief Engineer Myrtle stopped her work and stared at the speakers. The human's words reminded her of stories her grandfather used to tell about the old days, before the Great Ordering changed everything. Across the fleet, similar scenes played out. Gethtar, who had spent their lives following orders without question, began to wonder if those orders were right. Enough. Vergith roared. He activated the ship's emergency protocols, sealing off sections and calling for loyal troops to maintain order. But it was too late. The spark had been lit. Zareth felt the change spreading through the ship like ripples in water. Elena, she whispered. What have we done? We've given them a choice, Elena replied. The same choice you made. Within hours, the Kethtar fleet was in chaos. Some ships remained loyal to Vergith and the old ways. Others declared their support for Zareth and her message of change. A few tried to stay neutral, unsure of what to believe. In the depths of the flagship, Kelvar and a group of young officers met in secret. What Zareth said makes sense, whispered communications specialist Yelsara. I've monitored human transmissions for years. They're not the weak creatures we were told about. They're brave and creative and loyal to each other. But if we rebel against the Supreme Commander, we'll be marked as traitors, Kelvar pointed out. Maybe, said Myrtle, who had joined the group. But what if we're already on the wrong side? What if the real traitors are those who destroy instead of create? Their secret meeting was interrupted when the door burst open. But instead of loyal guards coming to arrest them, it was Zareth herself, with Elena's glowing form beside her. We need your help, Zareth said. Without preamble, my father is preparing to attack not just the human colonies, but any ship in our fleet that shows signs of rebellion. We have to act fast. What do you want us to do? Kelvar asked. Elena stepped forward. We want you to help us send a message to the entire galaxy, not just to Kethtar, but to every species that's been conquered or threatened by the Empire. It's time to show them that there's another way. Over the next few hours, Zareth and her growing group of allies worked to take control of the ship's communication systems. It wasn't easy. Vergith's loyal forces fought back, and running battles erupted throughout the massive vessel. But Elena's quantum presence gave them an unexpected advantage. She could appear anywhere on the ship instantly, providing reconnaissance and coordination that no normal commander could match. Finally, they reached the main transmission array. As Kelvar worked to override the security locks, explosions echoed from the corridors outside. Vergith's forces were getting closer. Almost there, Kelvar said, sweat beading on his blue forehead. Just a few more seconds, the door exploded. Inward, and Vergith himself strode through, flanked by his most loyal warriors. Step away from those controls, he commanded, his weapon aimed at Zareth. This madness ends now. No, Father, Zareth said, standing her ground. This is where it begins. She activated the transmission array, and Elena's quantum energy boosted the signal far beyond anything the Kethtar had ever achieved. Their message burst out across the galaxy at faster-than-light speed, reaching every inhabited system. The transmission showed Elena and Zareth standing together, a human and a Kethtar. Former enemies now united by something stronger than war. People of the galaxy, Zareth began. I am Zareth, daughter of Supreme Commander Vergith of the Kethtar Empire. I stand here with Elena Vasquez, a human who died to save her people, and whose spirit lives on through the power of our connection. Elena took up the message. We're here to tell you that the age of conquest is ending. We're here to show you that former enemies can become friends, that different species can work together, that love is stronger than hate. We call upon all free peoples to join us. Zareth continued, not in a war of revenge, but in building something new, a galaxy where diversity is celebrated, where strength protects the weak, where every being has the right to choose their own path. The message spread like wildfire across known space, on 1,000 worlds, in 100 different species. Beings who had lived in fear began to hope, but their triumph was short-lived. As the transmission ended, Vergith raised his weapon. You have doomed us all, he said coldly. The High Command will not tolerate this rebellion. They will send fleets to crush every world that answers your call. Then we'll be ready for them. Zareth replied. With what? A handful of rebels and alien sympathizers? Elena's form suddenly flickered and began to fade. The quantum energy she had been using to maintain her presence was finally burning out. "Elena," Zareth cried out, reaching toward her. "Fading form. I'm losing cohesion," Elena gasped. "The quantum field is collapsing. I don't know how much longer I can hold on," as Elena grew fainter and fainter. Vergith smiled coldly. "Without your alien ghost, you are nothing. Surrender now, and I may show you mercy." But Zareth felt something new stirring inside her. Elena had given her more than love. She had given her courage, purpose, and the knowledge that some things were worth fighting for no matter the cost. "I don't need Elena to know what's right," Zareth said, standing straighter. "She taught me to think for myself, and I choose to believe that what we started here today will grow into something beautiful, round. The galaxy," her words were already proving true, on human worlds, on conquered planets, in the dark spaces between stars. Beings were rising up and declaring that they too chose hope over fear. The revolution had begun. 6 months after the galaxy-wide broadcast, the universe had split into two sides. On one side stood the remains of the Kethtar Empire, led by those who still believed in conquest and control. On the other side was the growing alliance of free worlds, where humans, rebel Kethtar, and dozens of other species worked together. The final battle was about to begin. Above the planet Harmony, a world where former enemies now lived side by side. Two massive fleets faced each other in space. The Imperial fleet was larger, with crystal ships that gleamed like deadly jewels. But the Alliance fleet was different. Ships of many designs flew together, sleek human vessels. Repurposed Kethtar cruisers, the living ships of the plant-like Verdani, and the geometric craft of the crystalline resonance. On the bridge of the Alliance flagship Unity, Zareth stood beside Captain Marcus Jen, Elena's former second-in-command from Kepler Station. Strange how fate worked. Enemies had become allies, and the student had become the teacher. "Enemy fleet is moving into attack position," reported the communications officer, a young human named Sarah. "All ships, prepare for battle," Zareth commanded. "Remember, we're not fighting to destroy them. We're fighting to show them theirs." Another way, in the space beside her, Elena's quantum form flickered weakly. Over the months, she had grown more and more unstable. Sometimes she was solid enough to almost touch. Other times she faded so much that only Zareth could see her. "I don't know how much longer I can stay," Elena whispered, her voice like wind through leaves. "You've already done enough," Zareth said softly. "You've changed everything." Elena smiled sadly. "We changed everything. Together, across the battlefield, aboard the Imperial flagship Eternal Dominion." Vergith prepared for what he believed would be his final victory. The High Command had given him their most powerful ships and their best warriors. Today, he would crush this rebellion and restore proper order to the galaxy. "All ships, advance," he commanded. "Show these traitors and aliens what happens when they challenge the Empire." The two fleets rushed toward each other like colliding storms. The battle that followed was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Imperial ships fought with cold precision, their crystal weapons cutting through space like frozen lightning. But the Alliance fought with something the Empire couldn't understand. They fought for each other. Human pilots saved Kethtar rebels who had run out of ammunition. Former Imperial engineers worked desperately to repair Alliance ships, even ones belonging to species they had once enslaved. When a Verdani living ship was badly damaged, ships from 5 different species formed a protective barrier around it, while it healed itself. "This is impossible," muttered Imperial Admiral Kolvux as he watched the tactical display. "They should be disorganized. Different species can't work together effectively." But they were working together, and it was beautiful. On the Unity, Zareth coordinated the Alliance forces with a skill that amazed everyone. She had learned human creativity and combined it with Kethtar's strategic thinking. The result was tactics that neither side had ever seen before. Squadron 7. Use the resonant ships as mirrors to bounce your energy weapons around the asteroid field, she ordered. Squadron 12. Have the Verdani ships release their spores to create a sensor screen. Elena's fading form stood beside her, offering suggestions and encouragement. Even as her quantum stability weakened, her tactical mind remained sharp. The battle raged for hours. Ships on both sides were damaged or destroyed, and brave beings on every side gave their lives for what they believed in. But slowly, the Alliance began to gain the upper hand, not through superior firepower, but through superior cooperation. That's when Vergith made his desperate move. Activate the quantum disruptor, he commanded, sir. His science officer said nervously, that weapon hasn't been tested. It could tear holes in space itself. Do it. The massive weapon charged up, drawing power from every ship in the Imperial fleet. Its target was the quantum field that held Elena's consciousness together. If Vergith couldn't defeat the rebellion through normal means, he would destroy the spirit that had inspired it. Elena, Zareth cried out as alarm screamed across the Alliance fleet. They're targeting your quantum signature. Elena's form began to flicker more violently. I can feel it, she gasped. It's trying to tear me apart. The quantum disruptor fired, sending a wave of destructive energy across space. Where it touched Elena, her form began to dissolve like smoke and wind. No. Zareth reached out desperately, but her hands passed through Elena's fading shape. Elena looked at Zareth with eyes full of love and sorrow. Remember what I told you. Love is stronger than fear. Connection is stronger than control. Don't leave me, Zareth pleaded. I'm not leaving, Elena said as her form grew fainter and fainter. I'm becoming part of something bigger. And then she was gone. The silence on the Unity's bridge was broken only by the sound of Zar. Its quiet sobs round the fleet beings who had been inspired by Elena's message felt a terrible emptiness. As if a bright star had suddenly gone out, Vergith's voice came over the communication channels. Cold and triumphant. Your ghost is gone, daughter. Surrender now, and I will make your deaths quick. For a moment, it seemed like the Alliance might break apart without Elena's unifying presence. Old fears and doubts began to surface, but then Zareth stood up, wiping away her tears. When she spoke, her voice carried across every ship in the Alliance fleet. Elena isn't gone, she said. She's here, and every choice we make to help instead of hurt. She's here, and every time we choose hope over fear, she's here. In the love that brought us all together, as Zareth spoke, something amazing happened. The quantum energy that had made up Elena's consciousness didn't disappear when the disruptor destroyed her form. Instead, it spread out across the Alliance fleet, touching every being who believed in their cause. For just a moment, every pilot, every engineer, every soldier in the Alliance felt Elena's presence. They felt her courage, her compassion, her unshakable belief that things could be better. All ships, Zareth commanded, her voice now strong and sure, advance, show them what we fight for. The Alliance fleet surged forward with renewed purpose. But this time, they weren't just fighting with weapons and ships. They were fighting with the power of shared belief, with the strength that comes from standing together, with the force of love itself. The Imperial ships began to falter, not because their weapons failed, but because many of their crews were beginning to understand what they were really fighting against. They were fighting against hope. They were fighting against the dream of a better future. One by one, Imperial ships began to stand down. Their crews refused to fire on people who had once been their comrades. Some even switched sides, joining the alliance they had been sent to destroy. Vergith watched his fleet crumble around him, and for the first time in his life, he felt truly afraid. Father, Zareth's voice came over his ship's communication system. It's over. Order your remaining ships to surrender. Never, Vergith snarled. I will die before I submit to this chaos. It's not chaos, Zareth said gently. It's life. Beautiful, messy, wonderful life. In the end, Vergith's flagship stood alone, surrounded by Alliance vessels. But instead of destroying it, Zareth ordered them to disable its weapons and board it peacefully. When the boarding party reached the bridge, they found Vergith slumped in his command chair, looking older than his years. The fight had gone out of him. What will you do with me? He asked as Zareth approached. What Elena would have done. Zareth replied, Give you a choice, you can spend the rest of your life in prison, clinging to the old ways. Or you can help us build something new. Vergith looked at his daughter for a long time. In her eyes, he saw the same determination he had always possessed, but tempered with something he had never understood: compassion. "Tell me about this new way," he said quietly. 5 years later, the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The Alliance had grown into a true federation of worlds, where differences were celebrated rather than eliminated. Former enemies worked side by side, sharing knowledge and culture in ways that made everyone stronger. On the capital world of New Harmony, Zareth stood in the Memorial Garden, a place dedicated to all those who had given their lives for freedom. At its center stood a statue, not of a warrior or a conqueror, but of a simple human woman with kind eyes and a gentle smile, Elena Vasquez. Read the inscription below. "Who taught us that one person's love can change the galaxy?" "You were right," Zareth whispered to the statue. "Love really is stronger than fear." A gentle breeze stirred the flowers around the memorial, and for just a moment, Zareth could have sworn she felt Elena's presence beside her, not as a quantum ghost, but as something even more real, as the living proof that love, once kindled, can never truly die across the galaxy. Millions of beings lived in freedom because one human warrior had chosen to sacrifice herself for strangers, and because that sacrifice had awakened love in the heart of her enemy. It was, everyone agreed, the greatest love story the universe had ever known.